Welcome to Women, Men, and Relationships. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's show. Happy Thanksgiving week, everyone. I was a little under the weather last week, and so you only had one episode. This week, I'm going to make up with it with 3. And the reason is because I'm also going to be publishing a show talking about different cooking oils and how some of them are really bad for you. And so as we're moving into a heavily cooking environment this week in the US and maybe elsewhere, if you're celebrating Thanksgiving or any other kind of holiday, I definitely want to empower you to use the best possible ingredients to help your health and not to kill your cells and create oxidation in the body and create disease. So there will be 3 shows this week for you to consume to make up for last week. So today's show, ready to come out? Well, I am, and I did. So for those of you that follow me on social media, on Instagram, or if you're connected to me on Facebook, that would be the only 2 ways I put it out, really, and some Twitter, but I came out of the closet with my relationship with Doug, and it was freeing in some ways, but of course also created some waves in other ways. Today's show is talking about, are you ready to come out in whatever way is meaningful to you? And one of the things that Devi and I are going to talk about has to do with spirituality, but it doesn't have to be spirituality. It could be literally in any way, shape, or form. And as we're moving into Thanksgiving week and appreciation and looking at holiday seasons and looking at next year and how we want to do things differently and how we want to be, I want to extend 2 invitations to you now. As you know, during Thanksgiving, there's Black Friday sales. And so we are also having a Black Friday sale over here, 25% off, releasing what weighs you down in January. Now, I've said I don't know if I'm doing it again and when I'm doing it again and where I'm doing it again and how I'm doing it again. Like, seriously, I have no plans as of right now. It's something I'm going to have to sit with and meditate on and look around and feel into, and I have some ideas, but it just means it's going to be a smaller group and it'll be more expensive and probably a little bit more trouble to get to because it'll be in an environment where, unlike LAX, if you're flying in, you get off the plane, you take a shuttle to the airport, or to the hotel, which is 10 minutes away. It really can't be easier. So if you're thinking about coming to Releasing What Weighs You Down, you're on the fence, I really wouldn't wait because it may not happen again in this way. And I guarantee you it won't be cheaper. So this is it. So 25% off Black Friday sale. Use the code 25OFF. Use capital letters, 25 OFF at checkout, releasingwhatweighsyoudown.com. It's also applicable for the 2-pay plan, which will end on December 10th, but the Black Friday sale will end Saturday morning. So you're getting this now. You have a few days, but don't forget, 25% off, Releasing What Weighs You Down in January. Use the code 25OFF, OFF. Okay, that was number 1. Number 2, I am starting a manifestation mastermind, and I am limiting it to 20 people, and I offer it to the Manifestation Challenge group first. And I've got a bunch of people interested who've already paid, who are already in, and I've got some spaces left. And I'm putting it out there to you into podcast land, those of you who listen to the show but are not a part of the Manifestation Mastermind. It is super cheap. It will never be this again. It is 6 payments of $97 or 1 payment of $497. I do not have a sales page for it. I have links for either the $97 offer a month or the pay in full $497, and you have to email me or get in touch with me somehow because, again, I'm limiting it to 20 people. It's a beta test to see how it goes. So for those of you that aren't business owners, what is a mastermind? A mastermind is a group of people that come together of like-mindedness who focus on and support and help each other do whatever it is you want to do. So in the manifestation mastermind, it's like doing the challenge, but only with 20 people, a little bit more in person, like it's going to be on Zoom. So you'll get to meet and get to know everybody, and we're going to leave space. What happens is you get to be the center of attention for a certain amount of time, and everyone else helps and focuses on your problem, your issue, and a solution for you and ideas for you. And as Napoleon Hill talked about in Think and Grow Rich, one of the benefits of Mastermind is it sort of opens up another portal of creativity that is a collective energy of all of us, which actually elevates our consciousness and allows in new information, new ideas, new inspiration, and new intuition. You can call it that, or you can call it to you allow in other non-physical entities to give you ideas and share information with you. So a mastermind can be a really special, powerful place for transformation to happen. Again, it's 6 months. It's starting in January, and you can sign up by getting in contact with me, and I'll send you the link. But there are 2 payment plans. It's either $97 a month for 6 months or $497 pay in full. Okay. And there's only 20 slots, and that is it. And the 2 meetings a month there'll be 2 meetings a month plus a Facebook group and an intimate 21 person Facebook group. And you'll get to know everybody and help each other and support each other. And what else about that? Oh, Zoom meetings. So I will collectively try to find a time that works for everybody. Most likely one of them will be on a weekday in the evening and the other one will be on a weekend. But again, I'm not married to that. Whoever shows up, first come, first serve, that's how we're going to schedule it around whoever's in the group. All right. So ready to come out? You're going to hear on this show how I talked about how I was ready to come out spiritually and to step into what I've been doing and what you've been listening to and what you've been watching unfold for the past year, both in my relationship and in my professional life. And I'm going to talk more about that on a future show. And you've all been a part of that, and I really do appreciate that. And I want you to go into this episode today really thinking about the areas in your life where you need to step out, where you are ready to expand, where you're ready to grow and be more of who you really are, and to release and let go of everybody else's judgments, opinions, fears, and issues with your choices. I really want to support you on that, and I really want to encourage you, again, to come to January's event. We're going to work on that. I can help you with that. But from now until the end of the year, I know for me, I'm doing it. I didn't know I was going to be doing it personally, but I knew I was going to be doing it professionally. And that is what this whole entire year has been about for me. I kicked it off with my own event at the beginning at Releasing What Weighs You Down in 2018. And who knows, we might conclude it with 2019, Releasing What Weighs You Down. But Devi and I have this great conversation about how she grew up and how her coming out, what that meant for her and how she did it. And so just, I want you to relate to yourself. And if the spirituality is not your thing, you're listening to this on nutrition, alternative medicine, or women, men, and relationships, just think about whatever that means for you, whether it be stepping into a new role at work or a new way of being in your life, moving, making a drastic change of some kind. Because I know for a lot of people, you've got desires that you don't act on because you're afraid about what other people are going to think about you and how they're going to respond. And so we often keep ourselves small, which unfortunately affects all of us. I put this post out. Doug and I came out on Instagram and on Facebook over the weekend. And of course, there was lots of support and love. But of course, in the background, there was also the haters and the people who had an issue with what we're doing and what we've done and how they think it affects them. And I'm not saying it doesn't necessarily affect them, but it's the understanding that if we live our lives based on how other people respond to us, then we're really not living our lives, right? You're living your life based on how someone else is going to respond. That's not your life. That is your giving your power away. And so today's show is really about being inspired to take your power back and claim it in a new way, whatever that means to you. So let me tell you a little bit about Devi. Devi Adea is a soulful speaker, author, coach, and conscious business strategist. As the host of the top-ranked Spiritual Entrepreneur podcast and creator of the popular Podcast on Purpose online academy, Devi moves entrepreneurs and leaders to embrace their soul's purpose and to share their truth with the world so they can experience elevated freedom, fulfillment, and results in work and in life. Devi has been featured 2 times as an icon of influence at the New Media Summit and interviews today's top podcasters and influencers on her brand new show, Podcasters on Purpose podcast, and shares her spiritual lifestyle and business insights on Devi TV, the podcast. When she's not speaking on stage or serving clients, you'll often find Devi doing yoga, enjoying music, or spending time with her husband and their 3 cats in their home in San Diego, California. Welcome to the show, Devi.
Hi, JJ. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I love you. First of all, I just want everyone to know that you and I met at the New Media Summit in April. And before that, we had a bunch of calls that we were on together. And I know somewhere I heard spiritual entrepreneur. And of course, my ears perked up because I don't think prior to you, there was anyone else, the last one, doing like spiritual things. And so all of a sudden I felt like, oh, someone else I can talk to. I can't wait to meet you. So I was happy to connect with you and to get to know you, and now have you as a friend and someone who I play with and I go to church with, and you're going to come swim at my house. And we traveled together and for different events, and so it's just been a delight to get to know you and to feel a sisterhood in the idea of coming out in a spiritual way. Because I know I heard you say something about when you came out, and I thought, yeah, that's what happened to me too. I kind of eased into it, and all of a sudden I realized, oh yeah, I just sort of came out. And so I want you to share your story with others, because you are multifaceted and you offer lots of things. And while your podcast is for spiritual entrepreneurs, everyone who listens to my show is not necessarily an entrepreneur, but everyone who listens to my shows, at least one of my channels, is spiritual and is potentially a closeted spiritual person because they listen to the show and I don't know if they've got a community to connect with. So I want you to help everyone through your story and through your advice about how to take that, what's inside of us, and utilize that, whether it be through a business or be through giving back or through just living your light, how you did that. So why don't you take us back?
Yeah, I'd love to. And JJ, I feel the exact same way about you. I think you are such an extraordinary human being in general, but just an amazing soul sister. And I'm so grateful for our connection. So,
Hmm.
right back at you, sister.
Thanks, thank you.
Well, let's go back to a little ways. So, for those of you who don't know me or aren't familiar with me, I grew up in Washington, D.C. at a time when spirituality was not something that was as spoken about. Kind of, there was like a new age thing, and Out on a Limb was out, with Shirley MacLaine. I think some of that was coming out, but in general, most people weren't talking about the same types of conversations that we have today now on our podcasts, right? And so I grew up in a very cosmopolitan family, but also a very spiritual family. So my father was president of a bank in DC, and there was definitely that side of things. And then there was also my godparents are both swamis. I grew up in a yogic tradition where I was taught to meditate when I could sit, and I came into a family of deeply spiritual women. My grandma was definitely a seer, and my mom and her sisters all had gifts, and my sister and I as well. I'm empathic, and I feel and see things that some people may or may not feel and see and perceive. And so as a child, growing up in DC, which, it's not changed that much in terms of, how things work there, very cosmopolitan. And we would go to my grandma's house on Sunday nights and we'd sit down and, we'd literally have like deceased relatives visiting us at the dinner table. Okay. And so I'd go to school as a little, young kindergartner, whatever, and talk to my friends about who would visit us at dinner. And they would just freak out like, what is wrong with you? You're a freak. You're crazy. And I remember going back to my grandma and saying, Grandma, why are they calling me a freak? What did I do? And she was like, oh, honey, you cannot tell the people at school what we talk about at home, or they'll lock you in a rubber room and throw away the key. And so as a very young child, I started to separate out my world. It was like there was this world that was very real and rich in my family that was, my true experience of life. And then there was kind of the superficial world outside of me where I would go and talk about, my tree torn shoes, or like my, going to the country club or what was on TV, or like that kind of thing, that felt safe. So I really quickly learned what I could talk about and what I couldn't talk about. And I started to compartmentalize the spiritual side of me. And I started to focus on what I thought I should be focused on. If you can relate to that, the things that we're told we should do growing up that we kind of take on. And I started to focus on, external achievement. And I I graduated from high school at 16, modeled for a little while, went to work, went to Carnegie Mellon and got a dual degree in information decision systems and management. And then I went to work for Oracle for 7 years. And fast forward, doing what I think I should be doing. It was one New Year's Eve, and I sat down at Oracle, and I'm writing out a list of what I called my short list, which is like a bucket list, right? Of all the things that I wanted to do before I I pass on. And I found a list from 2 years prior, and I was like, wow, in 2 years of my life, I've done nothing on the list of what I say is most important for me to do. And so I was like, all right, well, forget this. I'm going to do one a month. And so that year I scheduled one thing a month on that list. And I ran a marathon. I got scuba certified. I became a licensed skydiver. I traveled Europe. It was insane. It was a crazy year. And at the end of the year, I'm like, okay, so my list is looking almost all checked off. Well, now what? And I just remember sitting in this space of like, I thought I was supposed to do all of these things in order today to be able to make good money like I was at the time. And now what? Like, I didn't feel any more fulfilled or, um, any more joyful about my life. I thought I would have arrived somewhere. And so I ended up leaving the company and going to work for Anthony Robbins companies as a results coach, thinking, well, maybe if it's not about making money and having these experiences, maybe it's about contribution, right? Maybe if I go out and I make a difference in the world, I'm going to start to feel more fulfilled. And so I went and I did coaching. And while it was definitely great to be of contribution and service, there was still something that was pushing on me from the inside that I was missing. And, it took me years. I went on this journey of, doing different things from foreign currency trading to writing music to, getting 2 yoga teacher certifications, just trying different things, trying to find that fulfillment outside of me. And I came to realize that where the true fulfillment for me lied was in my full true self-expression in service to humanity. And it came because I decided to come out spiritually on iTunes. So I was talking to a friend and I said, I'd been listening to this podcast and had a podcast going from one side of the country to the other and back again. And I called up my friend. I said, I really want to do a podcast. She's like, me too. And so I'm like, great. And she's like, okay, well, how long do you think it'll take? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe 2 months. So she's like, okay, great. 2 months, we're going to do it. And I'm like, great. And so I had no idea what I wanted to podcast on because I couldn't figure out what my message was or what I wanted to share. I just knew that there was something inside of me that was pushing on me that wanted to come out. And she said, well, you've had that spiritualentrepreneur.com domain since like 99. Maybe you should just do it on that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I can't talk about that. I was terrified that still like the little 5-year-old girl that I might be locked in a rubber room and have the key thrown away if I started to share those things. So I basically just, said, well, can I have a little time? She's like, you've got 72 hours to decide. You can pick whatever you want, but you got to decide in 72 hours, which is a great thing because for us, when we're trying to make a decision, we think we'll figure it out in our head. But the truth is that we usually figure it out in the experience of actually doing it. So within 72 hours, I decided that I was, in fact, going to use spiritualentrepreneur.com. And I went and I launched a show. And I came out spiritually on iTunes. And let me tell you, I was terrified. I thought that, I launched with 3 episodes. And the first 2 episodes that I put out were interviews of other people. And I procrastinated on that first episode, which should have really gone first, because I was so afraid of telling people about my story and letting them know about how I had grown up and some of the gifts that I had and that I had been hiding for so long. And if you knew me really well, you might know that, but a lot of people didn't even know that aspect of me, my spiritual side. And so I pushed publish. It was like midnight, the night of the 2 months. And I put it out on iTunes. And I remember just shaking in my boots and thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? And about, I don't know, 3 days later, I started to realize I hadn't died. No one had shot me. I wasn't in a rubber room. And I was actually having fun. And I was starting to feel more fulfilled inside. It was like this part of me that was so true to who I was that I had been hiding this whole time. Having my inner world and my own inner experience was now allowed to come out and play and be seen. And so, I think a lot of us have gifts inside of us that we tend to kind of lock away because we're afraid of, gosh, what if someone truly sees me for who I am? What if they truly see all of me? What'll happen? And we don't allow ourselves to express that beautiful voice inside, that gift that we have in a powerful way because of that fear. So if you're in that place, I really invite you to find a way to start to let that part of you come out and play. And it doesn't have to be on iTunes. If it is, that's great. If it's not, just find places where you can start to share that part of you and allow that part of you to really be the gift to humanity that it's meant to be.
So I have many things I want to talk to you about right now. The first one is, first of all, I had no idea you went to Carnegie Mellon. I went to Carnegie
Yeah,
Mellon for pre-college. And
no
not that we
way.
would have
How
passed
funny.
each other because pre-college happened during the summer and not during college, but I'm from Pittsburgh. So the fact that you went to Carnegie Mellon sort of brings that kind of home to me. And then I want to talk about your time with the Tony Robbins company and being a coach with his organization. But what I think I want to start with before we go backwards a little bit is that I know you have your own live events, and I know that a lot of your some of your material is directed towards spiritual entrepreneurs, correct?
Yep,
Did you
all of it.
feel, I started my first event this January, and I had done events in the past, but nothing like this. And for me, like, I felt when I stepped into my first event, Releasing What Weighs You Down, it was again like that for you, pressing play on for iTunes and pressing record, like publish, because I I was about to step into a new role of, this is what I talk about, this is what I practice, and now I'm going to stand here and I'm going to be it in a way no one's ever seen before, in a way I've never done before. But it is what I'm being called to do, and the idea of having a community, like you said, find people who you feel safe with. I also didn't necessarily have that. I mean, I had started a couple of meetup groups, and I had gone to different churches and agape, but I still wasn't. And I'd had other groups like goddess groups in the past, but I still felt like, there's something missing. And it's that kind of well-rounded integration piece. And so all these things could have sort of just like led to, I need for these 10 reasons to create my own community of people doing this work, and for me to step into what I keep saying is important, what I keep saying is that is necessary for true transformation. But I had never done it before, and I was terrified, so I totally relate to you. And but it was such a beautiful experience. I mean, I knew that it would be, and I trusted the process. And when I came out of that, it was like, oh, this wasn't really a business decision, this was a calling. And it was a calling to not only for me to step into a new role and be who I truly am, but for to invite other people and like-minded people into a community where they could feel safe. So when you started your events, was it a business reason, or was it sort of similar to what I was talking about in terms of, because you had already been coaching, but had you done your own events before? And what was the impulse for you to sort of, was there the same scary moment of pressing go on iTunes as your first event, or by that point had you sort of been accustomed to it?
It's interesting. And I totally get what you're saying about when you're coming out in a big way on a stage, whether it's a podcast or an event. For sure, there's that feeling of like, okay, now I'm fully being seen, right? I started coaching back in 2000. So, but I was still closeted as a coach. Like people would say to me things like, I don't understand why all of these things happen when I'm around you. What's going on? And I was not telling them about a lot of the practices that I did just on an energetic level that created some of the amazing experiences with them, or how I was mirroring or reflecting them, and how they could use those tools and skills in their own life to help them. I'd kind of keep that to myself. And the most that I would get towards talking about spirituality was like with my C-level executives, I would talk about sourcing. Like, and I would say, like, we outsource things. Well, we can actually source leadership in our companies. We can source greatness in the people in our lives, right? But I wouldn't talk about the spiritual aspects because I was still terrified. So that actually, when the more that I've been on my show, the more that I've started to listen to other people share their message and share what they've had to share, the more that conversation has kind of gone down for me. That fear of being seen in that way. So by the time that I got to actually doing my event, and my event is not super spiritual, right? Because it's my event is called Podcast on Purpose. It is in the sense that I help people to launch their purpose and their message on a different platform themselves, and I really hold space for them that way. Um, but it's not like overtly spiritual, right? So I didn't have the same fear that maybe I would have had I been going out and doing an event that was, really more on a spiritual, like really sharing those gifts. But what was really interesting was I'm teaching technology, right? I'm sitting there. It was Saturday night, and I had gotten a lot of the edited episodes back that people were going to launch, and I was listening to it, and I was like, oh God, I'm launching leaders. Like I got it first. I was like, wow, everyone in here all of their shows are to be of service to humanity. There was not one person in there that didn't have a big purpose to share. And that just kind of lit me up. And I remember getting chills over that and feeling like, okay, now I'm seeing where the spiritual component is. And then I was very surprised because I had people in the course calling me their spiritual teacher and their spiritual guru, and I was not talking about spirituality at all. I mean, the most that I did was teach them the podcaster pause, which is some breathing, right? But I hadn't done anything that was like overtly spiritual. So I think we bring who we are to whatever we're doing. And I didn't quite have the same level of fear that I think I would have had if I had been overtly going out and talking about spirituality in an environment. But I also feel like a lot of that has gone down. Like my major fear of that was when I was going out on iTunes and I survived. Like I didn't die. That was like that terrifying moment for me was telling that story for the first time, right? And then telling it again a few times later and just thinking, God, what's going to happen to me? Or, what are the people that I've known for years going to think about me? Are they going to think I'm woo woo? And I've got multiple personality, like aspects of myself. Like I've got this techie girl who's a little bit nerdy, and I've got the spiritual girl, and I've got the artistic singer girl, and I've got the business girl. Like there's different parts of me, and sometimes parts of me will hear the other parts of me talking and be like, oh my God, that's so woo, would you just stop? Or some part of me is like, wow, really? Can you just lighten up a little bit? Like those different sides of myself, I can hear myself sometimes, and parts of me will cringe, like, and so I think the integration piece too of, bringing all those pieces together and sharing them and allowing them to play together in beautiful ways is also part of the journey when we start to really share our gifts fully.
Well, I think that your story is going to hit a lot of people because I know the people who have joined my manifestation challenge. I've got some people who like discovered that they're clairaudient and and hear things and see things, and so it's been really fun for me to sort of help guide. I don't have some of those, but people who do are coming together to support each other. And while that was an online group that I wanted to bring that online group into reality, into presence, because as you know, as well as I know, I don't know if you can talk about it quite as strongly or as life changing, especially for me in the last year, as it's been to meet other podcasters, right? Because we're doing this and we're in our secluded spaces wherever we are, and we're by ourselves and we're having great conversations, but we're not connecting on an energetic level any more than this, and we're not breaking bread, and we're not spending time together, and we're not having more giggles and fun outside of just this recording or a pre or post interview. And so having that community together is really important. So I would imagine that your group is really powerful. I know you have a mastermind group as well for spiritual entrepreneurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just the whole idea of that community, because you had the community within your family, and then you came into the world and they said, no, we don't accept that. It's too weird and that's scary. So there was like a disconnection. And then again, putting yourself back out into the world and hopefully into a community of people who are more accepting. I don't know if if New Media Summit was your first time being with other podcasters in that way. Podcast movement was for me. New Media Summit the first time was the second time. It was a more meaningful time because of one of my love languages is quality time. So I prefer a smaller group that I can get to know better than a massive sea of thousands of people who I'm only going to gravitate towards the ones that I want to get to know and pretty much ignore everybody else anyway. So how was your experience with meeting other podcasters?
It was amazing. Yeah, I was talking with Amy Schuber the first day we kind of connected. I know you and I kind of ran up to each other. We're like, we want to connect. We want to get to know you more.
Yep.
There was just a natural attraction of energetic attraction between you and I. And I remember Amy and I went out to dinner the first night at the New Media Summit. And I remember we were sitting down at the table and we were just talking about the blessing of that, of being around other people that are taking the podcasting journey, because it is kind of a unique journey to have a podcast and to have a message that you're sharing like every week consistently in the way that all of the icons there have been doing for a while, and to be able to share kind of the challenges and the things that we've learned and the areas where we want to grow, and also, I think it's a unique experience to hear the amount of stories that you hear as a podcaster every week, and for you, I'm sure it's even more because you have multiple shows. But there's a unique journey of transformation that I believe happens when you have your own show, and every week you're listening to someone who is talking in the area of something that's most important to you, because typically we pick a show on something that's deeply moving to our soul. Like for me, spiritual entrepreneurship, it bridged those two worlds for me. I think, when we have that, it's a different experience, and it's nice to have someone who gets you. Because a lot of times as podcasters, we don't actually hear how our message is landing for our listener. Like, those of you who are listening right now to JJ, if you have an opportunity to let her know the impact of her show and how it's really made a difference for her, you can even go and like write a review in iTunes. I know for me, I read mine. I imagine you read yours too, JJ. Yeah? Do you read your reviews?
I did. I don't know if do you get a notification when someone, because I've stopped asking for reviews. I get my reviews on Facebook, on my Facebook page, and then I actually have my audience does reach out to me. Not everybody, of course,
No
but
good.
pretty much every week I get at least 2 or 3 emails in some way, shape, or form, either through Instagram or Messenger or an email of somebody who's listened to the show or just found it and binge listened. So I do get that feedback, which is one of the reasons why I continue to persevere. Someone asked me yesterday, how do you do 4 shows? I'm like, well, when your show makes a difference and it's
Yeah.
not just about me and there's not just me talking into the air and there's crickets and no one cares, when I actually know people are listening and they are finding value, then of course it makes you want to do it. So I don't, but thank you for reminding me. Maybe I should go back and look. I'd love everybody to review the show. If you've sent me an email, please just copy and paste it and stick it on a review in iTunes. It'd be really easy. You
Perfect.
don't have to write anything new. Just click the 5-star button and add your comments that you already sent to me. Because I
Perfect.
can't do it for you, or I would.
And it makes a difference, right? So you think about like all of the singers that are out there that we've like had breakups to their songs and cried our eyes out to their songs, or we've had, big transformations in our lives, or things have been great and we've been celebrating to that music. They don't hear back a lot of times about how the music impacts, other people, their fans, or their lives. For us, our listeners, I don't always hear. And when I hear stories, like I had a friend that was in Arizona not long ago, in an Uber out in the middle of Arizona, and was sharing some music on a playlist with the Uber driver, and noticed that the podcast app, he's like, "What podcast do you listen to?" And it turns out that my show was his favorite, and that he had moved over from another country, and it had been a real solace for him to be able to listen to that every week, and was helping him to grow. So having that feedback, it's random. Your friends in another country, in another state, and it shows up. So I think sometimes too, that feedback loop, it's nice to get the feedback that things are going well. So definitely give her some 5 stars, and let her know, just copy paste that you love her show. And for sure, I think having that community makes a really big difference. The people that are of like mind, like heart. And I know for you, you really fostered that inside of your own tribe as well, to create the space for everyone where they can share and feel safe to be seen for who they are.
I do, and thank you. You haven't even been to my event, and to know that one of the comments I had was someone who had been to Esalen. You know about Esalen, right, in Big Sur. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very beautiful place that has retreats, and the comment was that for my event, like everyone got so much personalized time to share that they don't even do that at Esalen. So I thought, well, that was a really great compliment, because it really grew the community of people in the room and deepened our relationships. So I want you to put your spiritual entrepreneur and coach hat on for a second, because like I said, I have a bunch of people who are entrepreneurs or people who want to be entrepreneurs, and then I've got the people who will never be entrepreneurs. And what's the through line is for some of them on some of the shows is that there is a bit of spirituality, and maybe they feel strange or weird, or they can't really talk about it to too many people. If you so I'm gonna ask you to divide it into 2 sections. So first, we're gonna talk to the people who are wanting to be more openly spiritual, or have a message that they want to do something with, but they are not really ready to become entrepreneurs. What kind of advice as a coach, from the perspective that you've had in your life story, would you have to tell them, like different ways that they could either start to explore or trust or play with or test, or just connect with people in a different way to start to fulfill that desire?
Beautiful. Yeah. So I love this question. So one of the things that I've noticed for me as I've kind of slowly come out spiritually and then just kind of really did it on iTunes, um, is that most people don't initiate that conversation at the level you may want to have the conversation. If you're someone that has that inner stirring and like you experience life from a deeply spiritual place, maybe you are clairaudient, maybe you are clairsentient, maybe you are clairvoyant, and you have these experiences, but you don't have anyone really to talk to about it. Building community around you that shares that conversation makes it very safe to start to have those, to start to grow that and share that message just in a little pod, even, and obviously JJ's community is probably a great space to do that, where you can start to get to know more of the people that have that conversation that's open, right? But one of the things that I've found is if, let's say, I'm at an event and I'm energetically drawn to someone, like you can feel it. There's like a feeling of, wow, there you are again, like you've known them before or something, or there's a feeling of a deep resonance, right, inside of your heart. Like there's not a lot of resistance between you and that person, but there's just an opening and a well of what I like to call well of yummy, right? We can call it whatever you want. There's usually a reason, and that typically is because they probably actually have the same level of connection to their own soul that you do, right? And you guys are in a similar band of frequency on the scale. And so, one of the things that I started doing earlier on when I was wanting to talk more, because I felt very free to talk with, obviously my family or my godparents or whoever, but there's people I wanted to meet in the world, and we weren't having those conversations. Everything was focusing on business or it was focusing on something else, is to actually go there first and to make it safe, but in a gentle way, right? So one of the things that I remember, some of my closest friends now, we call ourselves a soul family, but it's like my soul tribe. We met at events, right? And JJ, you and I met at an event, and I felt an instant resonance with you as well. And there's probably a reason, because we both share a similar frequency band, right? And we have a similar, spiritual connection. And so with my friends, I said, look, I'm actually I'm putting together this show that I'm going to be doing. It's called The Spiritual Entrepreneur. And I just started talking about how I felt like a lot of people were teaching things that were missing the soul. Like they were teaching tactics and practical advice, but that they weren't talking about the 99.9% of what really creates success in life and what creates reality. And so just opening up that conversation, I had people coming and telling me, oh, no way, I'm a shaman, right? Or I work with my kids, they're empathic. I have a children's book for empathic kids that I put out. And so I started talking about how when I was younger, I could, I always thought that it was normal that you'd feel other people's feelings. And it wasn't until I was at a grocery store line, one day when I realized that I was happy and someone else was tired, and I was tired all of a sudden, that was what was going on for me. And I asked a friend about it, and they said, not everybody's that way. So I just started sharing like little stories in my life about how I kind of started to awaken to my own feelings and gifts and things that I was experiencing. And what I found is doing that and then stopping and listening gave them the space and the permission to be a little woo woo themselves, right? To be able to go there and to be able to start to share more of their truth. And it's almost like you take a little step towards each other, unless someone's really comfortable, and then they'll just come in and say what they're going to say. And you start to find that you guys speak a similar language. And for me personally, because I didn't talk a lot from when I was 5 to people outside of my family, about spirituality. Now, when I'm talking to people, sometimes I don't always have the words to express what it is that I'm wanting to say. Like my family and I speak a certain language, but some of the words that people use in society, especially in business, don't really resonate. And so finding a way to speak and communicate in a way that helps people to get it, a lot of times I'll use metaphor. So if you're wanting to talk to someone about something that maybe they can't fully get, like I teach the consciousness upgrade framework. It's a way of upgrading our system. So I use, from my software background, obviously, I talk about how if you have a computer, right, that can be overloaded, like you have too many programs running on it, or things are not working. Oftentimes it's because we have programs that we no longer should be running on our system that need to be either shut down or removed or deinstalled, right? Or sometimes we have a slow connection to the server, the internet, right? That's connecting us to something we're wanting to download, like our connection to our own inner soul and downloading our own divine guidance. And so I use metaphors to explain how you can do a consciousness upgrade by removing those programs that are no longer working, deepening that connection, and making sure your circuitry is set up every day by having a presence practice, and then installing new programs that actually move you forward so that your system works really well and life becomes a lot easier. Now, I can explain that in a metaphor a lot more easily than I could if I was trying to talk to someone and explain a consciousness upgrade just in words, because they're not going to get it as much. So that's another way that you can start to open that conversation. So starting to have conversation, moving towards people and building that community around you will really support you as you're wanting to take those steps to coming out and sharing more of who you truly are, and having an environment where there's a lot of love around you, because it really helps to have that support as you're starting to speak things. And, for me, having my friends stand there and say, you need to use spiritualentrepreneur.com because that's who you are. Without that friend, I might not have. I might have a show that's, entrepreneur, right? It's not spiritual entrepreneur. And that would be a real missing for me. And it would be a missing for the people that I serve.
And it would be a disservice to people like me too, who wouldn't have been able to be so excited about, not that I wouldn't have still connected with you, I would have, but I would have not understood more of who you are, because the spiritual part sets you apart.
That's right. That's right. It's the true part
Right.
that sets us apart. The true part
So
of who we are. Yeah.
So now let's put the coaching hat back on, and people who are in the audience who are thinking maybe they're either entrepreneurs already or they are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs. What kind of work do you do besides podcast and I have the mastermind, with spiritual entrepreneur, with people who are in business for themselves?
Yeah. So I tend to have people come to me to hire me when they've either hit that place of like, now what, right? Like they've created a lot of success, but they're not fulfilled and they're wondering how to express something, or someone that's got like a mission or a message or a purpose that's pushing on them from the inside, very much like what I went through, because we tend to help people with what we've gone through ourselves, with moving through and finding a way to express that in a profitable business and in podcast as a platform. There's so many different ways as an entrepreneur for you to take your unique mix of richness and gifts and intuition and your beautiful message of what you're here to share that is, I promise you, unique to you, because each one of us, no one can duplicate your full life experience, which really molds us into who we are. And so I take those parts of them, and I'm really good at reflecting back wisdom within someone and witnessing the greatness and pulling it out. So that's one of the gifts that I have. And so when I work with people in a coaching capacity, a lot of times I help them to mine what that is within themselves. And then I use my business background, my technology background, to help them to set up the platforms around them. So you have an opportunity, if you have something pushing on your heart and your soul, and you're feeling like there's something that you really are meant to share in service to humanity, and you want to you're in the entrepreneurial path already and you're wanting to take it to a new level, or you're wanting to step into that, there's no better time than now. The technology is set up right now to support us in so many ways to have our message out on a global scale. There's so many different software vendors that give us platforms to share our message. You can do self-publishing now in ways that you couldn't do before, for creating more of a calling card, I really believe, for your business. And it's not really a great business on its own, but there's stages you can speak on. There's so many different ways for you to get your message out and be heard and share and gift people with the gift that you are. And it really just comes from taking time to truly stop those programs, whatever's running for you from the past, to let go of those programs that maybe are keeping you stuck or stopped. And that you can do that with energy, you can do it with conversations. There's different ways that you can shift those. Put in some really healthy, grounded practices that connect you to the deep well of wisdom within. I'm a firm believer that each one of us carries all of our answers inside. We just don't always look there to find them. And so having a practice where you go in and you mine those downloads and that wisdom, and you state a really powerful intention to what it is that you want to step into, and put the structures in place that you're guided to from that inner wisdom, and then just literally put the accountability in place and step forward and listen and step forward and listen. It's pretty simple what you can create with just being in the presence of that divine truth inside. And so I would say, pick a platform that you love, whatever it's going to be. If it's going to be, an online business, an in-person business, events, if it's going to be a brick and mortar store, if it's going to be a podcast, whatever it is that you feel resonates most with you, start with one and start to build that out and listen inside for what that message is. And I promise you, if you're questioning it, or you're like, who am I to do that? Or God, what if they see me? Or I don't want that. Or what if this is the wrong thing and I get stuck doing this thing and I can't do this other thing? Whatever the conversation is that you're having, when you start to step into it, you're going to start to get new awareness and new realization of the gift that it is. Like, I wouldn't have known until Saturday evening that I was launching Leaders. I knew my course was called Podcast on Purpose, but I had no idea of the impact of what I was seeing until I saw it, until I was doing it. And that's, I think, is very true for anyone who's stepping into doing a business. You're going to start to see what resonates and what doesn't as you step into it. And then for you as well, I would say build community around you. Have people in your life that are up to similar things, very much like JJ and I. We're part of an icon posse now, right? We help each other with growing our shows and the work that we're doing in the world, what we're up to for helping in service to humanity through our businesses. Like, find that tribe for you and have that tribe around you to support you. And, I'm a firm advocate for coaches. I've been doing it a long time. I've been coached. I get coached. I think it's a great thing to have in your life, someone that can, see things that maybe you can't see for yourself. JJ, I'm sure, is great at that. I do that. Find someone that you resonate with that can help you and support you in that path, and just take those steps. Put out your first steps and start moving forward.
So if they want to coach with you and find more out about different things they can do with you, I know that your website's probably the best place, right?
Yeah, my website. If they're really interested and serious about it too, they can email support@deviadea.com, and we can, have a further conversation about that.
So support at Devi Adea, DeviAdea.com. I'm going to say that again. Support at Devi, Devi Adea, Adea.com, because I don't have show notes and this doesn't get put on the web. So they have to hear it. They have to spell it when they listen to the show, and it's at least at the end of the show. So if you need to go back and reference it, you can find it because it's going to be at the end, close to the end. I'll say it one more time, but her website is DeviAdea.com. So DeviAdea.com. And that would be a way to find out more of whether you're an entrepreneur or you're not. And why don't you tell us about, you've got other things that you do, like the children's book. So why don't you tell us some of the other things you have on your site?
Yeah, so I'm really about helping people to express and experience the voice of their soul through the work that they do in the world in service to humanity, and if that's in a profitable business, a podcast, or whatever. And for me personally, I like to express my voice of my soul too. So I do that through my online courses and through helping people in the way that I do through coaching and that consulting and that sort of thing, live events. But one of the things that I also love to do is I love to sing. So I have a single on my website you can hear. It's called Higher Ground. And it's about love that's lost early in life, if it's gone too soon. And I also have a children's book that I wrote for kids that are trying to distinguish what are their feelings versus someone else's feelings. I think a lot of times kids tend to carry everyone's stuff on their own little bodies. And so it's a story about Callie the koala who goes through his day and meets a lot of different kids and takes on their stuff and then realizes what's his and what's theirs and gets to choose. And I've had a lot of kids say, make it their nighttime companion where they go to sleep with my book, which feels really good to me, to know that it's touching, children everywhere too. So if you have a child that is dealing with that feeling of not knowing how to handle all the feelings that they're experiencing. I know JJ was telling me about my astrology, that I feel it in my body because of my water sign, I think. Is that right? Did I say that right, JJ?
Yes, because your moon sign is in Scorpio. And so your moon is how we deal with emotion, and you have a water sign there. Yeah.
Okay. Which she's amazing in astrology, which I know you all probably already know. But and so having those feelings processing through your body, especially if that's how you function in the world, it can really make it overwhelming. So it's a book that helps with that. And I have someone who's actually reading them in prisons right now too, to women that are in prison that are dealing with some other things too. So adults, kids. And then I also do my podcast on purpose course. I have for the entrepreneur podcast on purpose. I do coaching and consulting and corporate board facilitation in that area focusing really more on obviously spiritual entrepreneurs, creatives, leaders. That's really where my focus tends to lie. And then, as far as working with individuals, I have a consciousness upgrade program that I've been putting together, and using all of my years of coaching experience and my spiritual practices, I brought that all together to help people to really make a shift in consciousness, because I really believe that any challenge we're facing in life, if we can shift our vibration around it, we can completely transform the situation very easily. So I do that work as well.
Which everyone would agree, I also agree with and feel the same way about, which is why we are soul sisters. Devi, this has
Exactly.
been very rewarding for me because for several reasons. One, just to know that there's someone else doing sort of the spiritual entrepreneur journey. And I know I'm not alone. And I know you have tons of people in your back pocket and you come to your groups and your coaches, like who are coaching with you, clients of yours who are also in that realm. And it really is important for me to connect with them and for to know that you exist, because as I've entered into a more spiritual side in my podcasting and being able to use that and leverage that idea to attract more people and then share all the other gifts, right? So it's that sort of foundation of that connection that we all have. And then how do we use life and operate life from that place, which is grounded in maybe a practice or a belief or a feeling or an energy that we're all wanting to connect with. So it's just great for me to share you with my community. It's awesome for me to get to know you even more and spend more time with you and become friends and know we're going to see each other again and again, and that you actually don't live that far away. So I can even come down and see you and you're going to come up and
Yay.
see us. And so it's just nice, the relationships that I have built and the community that I've built through podcasting and then being who I am is why I continue to do this and have people like you on to let people know that you can do that too. And there's nothing stopping you. So if you feel lonely or disconnected or uninspired or off purpose or wanting a different life feeling, that we're doing it and we're here to help you do it too. And so please reach out to Devi if you're interested in coaching with her, learning more about her, getting her book. So deviadea.com, DeviAdea.com. I love you, sister, and I look forward to spending more time with you very soon.
I love you too, sister. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I love, love, love your work in the world. It is so beautiful and so needed. So thank you for who you be in the world and in service to humanity.